really the heart of the message this morning, is that that peace that we're always seeking for out there is not going to happen if it doesn't start here. And there was a time in my life where peace was kind of an unknown quality in my life. I spent a lot of time in irritation and kind of really close to always not being in peace. Anybody else gone through even phases of that? Mm-hmm. You know, if you're a parent, you've got children that have kept you up at night, you're sick yourself, you know, anything that keeps us from getting the rest we need, or, you know, whatever. Have you noticed that your threshold for irritation can be quite hypersensitive? And I notice when I'm driving, that's one of the places where peace, I can go from feeling kind of zen to flipping over to and I was looking at, you know, what was I going to do? A few of the speakers have talked about, you know, we say we'll speak, and then we got to figure out, well, what are we going to actually speak about? And what's the theme for the month? The theme for the month is joy. It's about the joy of life for December, as I recall. Yeah, so that's why joy's in there. And then peace. This is the week of peace that you're going to be reading about in the Advent books, all about peace. And as we can hear from that song, we have to, if we want peace to actually be something that radiates out from us and gives us the peace that we say we want, we must actively engage in practices. We must actively cultivate. They're going to check on the turkey back there and still smell it, still salivating. So cultivating peace, you know, actively participating in it. That really speaks to our fifth unity principle. Through thoughts, words, and actions, we live the truth we know. It's not enough to know knowledge. We must put it into practice. And for some reason, the last several talks, when I've been given, I go into, you know, little meditation, say, well, what am I going to speak on? And I get a title, and then I have to come up with, well, what is the title going to lead people to? And then I'm given a little spiel about it, and then I have to live into it. I actually have to go back and look at what did I say I was going to talk about, because I want to make sure that you hear something that's relevant to what the ads are about. And you've heard other speakers say that once they step into a talk, life starts living. It starts pushing the places where what we're talking about is incongruent. And so joy and cultivating peace, has anyone else felt a lot of pushing of energies, emotions the last few weeks? Now, if you're into astrology, we just came out of a Mercury retrograde, and there's a lot of pushing in the energetics of feeling the feelings that we're feeling, letting them be, letting them flow, let them have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then move into the next moment, which often after I have let go of a sadness or an irritation, and if I am doing my practices, I almost always come into a greater feeling of peace. And these words in the title, The Joy of Deliberately Cultivating Peace, have a meaning. So I was asked, Spirit asked me to, you know, just look at what these words actually mean. It's, you know, peace. Let's go to the end of the sentence, this peace. Now, peace can be something to each one of you, and we could take the time to hear what it is. We hear overlap, but there might be individual aspects that are very meaningful to you. But this is the context of what I'm looking at. In the Webster Dictionary, it's a state of tranquility or quiet, freedom from disquieting or oppressive thoughts or emotions, and harmony in personal relationships. Then we have Charles Fillmore. Charles Fillmore is a co-founder of Unity. He has this lovely little book, The Revealing Word, and he gives the meaning that is taught about these words and phrases in Unity. And peace is harmony and tranquility derived from awareness of the Christ consciousness. Steadfast affirmation of peace will harmonize the whole body structure and open the way to attainment of health conditions in mind and body, until world peace is based on the divine law of love, and this law incorporated into the pact of peace, as well as into the minds of those who signed the pact, there will be no permanent peace. So I invite you to notice for a second, because that's the word we're concentrating on. Peace. God's peace is mine. All things contribute to the calm peace of my soul. Now let's look at joy. This joy of living life that is the theme of this month. Joy is the emotion evoked by well-being, success, or good fortune. It's the state of happiness, a source or cause of delight, and to experience great pleasure or delight. And Charles Fillmore actually typed this one out, but this is out of the book, The Revealing Word. Charles Fillmore defines joy as the happiness of God, expressed through God's perfect idea, man, human being. Joy and gladness are strength-giving, especially if this mind is fixed on the things of spirit. And so, having peace is implied that brings joy. Has anyone noticed that? That when you've had peace, and it doesn't mean you're still and just have to be quiet in a quiet meditation and nothing's going on around you. I know people who find peace in their physical activities. I'm imagining that you musicians can find a lot of peace with your music. And there's sound and there's action. So that peace that can happen no matter what's happening around. And that joy. And so we see that outside of the secular construct of what joy and peace is, that God is at the center of it, and that Christ consciousness, that God within us. And we understand here that God is everywhere present. There is only one presence and one power active as the universe and as my life, God the good. So we know that God is in us, around us, acting through us. The creative life force is calling us forth. We can ask, what is life? Michael Beckwith asked this question. Reverend Michael Beckwith down at Agape. What is life trying to express through means of me? This vision that wants to be born through my life. And so we're told here that joy is of God, peace is of God. How is this God force, this Christ consciousness, this I am presence that we teach here that is alive in us? And as we say namaste, namaste, and we greet people and say, the Christ in me honors the Christ in you, the divine in me honors the divine in you, the God in you, I honor the God. The God in me honors the God in you. You know, whatever words we use, knowing that this is everywhere present. And so, when you look at all things contribute to the calm peace of my soul. How is that possible that the non-peace can contribute to the peace of my soul? For me, when I recognize what is not peace, it helps me to understand what it is. The non-peace is usually not what I want. Usually pretty good these days of recognizing, whoa, I am so not in peace. It is agitating, it is irritating. I don't care to contribute to ongoing non-peace. So non-peace, what we don't desire, helps us to know what we do desire. And if any of you are like me, sometimes you may have fallen a little asleep to it and had to have something rattle your cage a little bit to recognize. This is what happened to me, times where I've needed something to push a limit because I've gone a bit numb to the unpeace. And I need something to wake me up. And so we've talked about in other talks about everything's a blessing. Anthony has a beautiful song about that. Everything is a blessing. To me, that ties in. that all things contribute to the calm peace of my soul. When I recognize that everything is a blessing, this becomes part of the deliberate aspect of the joy of deliberately cultivating peace. To be deliberate about something is characterized by or resulting from careful and thorough consideration, characterized by awareness of the consequences, slow, unhurried, and steady, as though allowing time for decision on each individual action involved. Now you might notice that you don't always have time to do all that. Oh, slow, deliberate, allowing time. Often life's happening at pretty quick pace. And so being able to practice in a slow way so that in the heat of the moment where peace is, a non-peace is stirring up, our practices through thoughts, words, and actions, we live the truth we know. As we practice that in the slow times, in the meditations, in the quiet, in the easy places where we don't have as much invest. If I'm in the grocery store at Safeway and I'm running late and the teller is having trouble and this and that's happening, I noticed at one time I would really spin into irritation around that. Now I realize this is an opportunity for meditation. Eyes open or eyes closed meditation, being to the best of my ability the I am expressing right here, right now, in this very moment, and being deliberate about it, and having an awareness of the consequences. And the primary consequences for me is I don't have to keep being activated into a state of irritation that gets my cortisol level up and all those stress hormones going crazy. I don't have to leave the store and get in my car irritated because of what happened, and then get more irritated when someone cuts me off. So the consequence for me of being a much more deliberate cultivator on purpose and choosing peace is that my body gets to be a whole lot healthier. I used to have a lot of health challenges, chronic colds and sinus infections, and Louise Hay talks about sinus congestion being old resentments and anger, and I had a lot of that contributed to my unpeace. Now cultivate, let's talk about cultivate. In the raising of crops, we know that's you're working the soil, but outside of crops, cultivate is to foster the growth of and to improve by labor, care, or study. And so we've seen a rise of organizations that are dedicated, people who are dedicated to actually being peacemakers that Anthony talked about, that aren't just willing to let peace happen inconsequentially and non-deliberately and by accident. They are saying, I am choosing the joy of deliberately cultivating peace in my life so that I can then contribute it into the world. Gandhi was certainly one of the greatest personages of the last few centuries that made it his mission to consciously, purposefully cultivate peace. And that be the change you want to see in the world that we attribute to Gandhi. There are several authors who say that's not exactly what he said. It is the heart of what he said. And that what he actually said is, we are but a mirror of the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the world of our own body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies of the world would also change. As a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change toward him. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others do. It's a whole lot easier to say, be the change you want to see in the world. And I did read an article one time by his daughter who said that word would really be becoming. Becoming the change. Be is you be. And it's that. And most of us, if you are in the beingness of peace, you might have another moment where you flipped out of, oh, I'm not being peace. And then you flip into being peace. And as we come into mastery, as with anything, the idea is we'll be being in peace. That's really a process of becoming. And so his daughter said, can take the pressure off. If we're becoming, it implies that sometimes we're not. And so this pressure of having to be something when we're not that, and if you ever have held any judgment on yourself that you're going, I thought I had this handled, and then all of a sudden, bam, something's in my face. It's a phone call, it's a text, it's someone cutting us off, and we had a momentary fright that we were going to be in an accident. I mean, we've got children in the car, so then we can kind of spin out in this non-peace. So if we can allow that we are in process, we are in the process of becoming, and have compassion for ourselves, and be awake and aware in that compassion of that moment, and be a deliberate creator of what it is we're choosing. If that's peace, you could put anything with that. The joy of being a deliberate creator of whatever it is. So Gandhi's top 10 fundamentals for changing the world. Change yourself. Change yourself. People all around us can be really working well in peace. And if I don't have peace in myself, sure, everyone's had that experience where we can tell where someone's not in peace. You've all been able to feel that in me over the weeks. You can feel, oh, wow, I'm not quite in the peace I normally am in. And the people around me are doing really quite well. It's my unpeace. And then notice how any of us can then spin out. So taking charge of ourselves, we must allow ourselves to cultivate. And how you do that, there's so many ways to do that. The irritations that drove my life, I needed to get help with that. I went to psychologists. I went to very many meaningful retreats and learned how to access what was challenging for me that hadn't completed on its own. And we complete so much on our own. If we knew the life story of everyone here, what you've all gone through and the challenges and what you've worked through, we are amazing. We are very creative problem solvers, and human beings can really accomplish a lot on our own. And then there's times where we need help. And to change ourselves, we often need some outside help. So that was really key for me, to learn when to reach out and get help, and how to learn new practices that I didn't know. My parents didn't know any of this stuff that we're talking about. They did the best they could, but they didn't know how to actively cultivate peace in our family, as well as, we were having a little conversation with them on the other side of the veil that they kind of would like to have been able to do. But they did the best they could. Now it's up to me to expand on that. Second, you are in control. I'm in control of my feelings. Nobody can make me feel anything. If you've ever said, oh, you make me, or if someone says, do you make me? It's like, time out. No, we're all in control. I mean, you could say that there are a few times when people, in the immaturity, like the immaturity of a child, they don't have control. I'm talking about, when we're adults. So we really do need to acknowledge that we're in control. Nobody can make us feel anything. Number 3, forgive and let it go. We can never forgive, Gandhi said. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. And so how you go about forgiveness and what that means to you, how you do that, there are so many different ways. Ho'oponopono practice in the Hawaiian practice is about letting go. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, I love you. Now, there's a whole bunch of information under that, and I've been initiated in some of that teaching. You can talk to me about it afterwards. But the idea that in that practice, Dr. Ken Liu, who was the teacher of that, said, it's just data. When unpeace comes up, so if I'm driving along and I have unpeace because somebody cuts me off, it's just data. Be with the data and allow the data to heal, allow it to clear, allow it to become a non-issue and move into the next moment. I know if I have to do that over and over again, that there's something that wants to be looked at, and that's where I can do my inner work and get help if I need work with that. Number 5, was I on 4? Oh, let's see, where's 4? Without action, you aren't going anywhere. Got to take action. That's a good principle. We've got to put things into practice and action. And take care of this moment. We've heard so many phrases about being in the now and whatnot. Now, I've come to understand if something is really irritating me in the now, it's really hurting me, I have grief, I have anger, it's actually happening in the now. Where it happened would be in what we call the so-called past. But it's still alive, it's still spinning. There's a part of my psyche that is feeling what? Abandoned, is feeling hurt. And in the now, I can bring that to peace. So it's not about ignoring what the past has to teach. The past and its incompleteness is a great teacher. Number 6 is everyone is human. Hello, God. Hello, God. Hello, God. Hello, God expressing. Hello, God made manifest. Neil Donald Walsh talks about when he sees someone who's irritated, the person's angry, he just asks, I wonder what's going on in that person's life, that they're in so much pain that they have to strike out at me or strike out at that person to try and relieve their pain. They are a human being doing the best they can. We can put boundaries around how we engage with it. Doesn't mean we have to keep engaging, but when we can keep the human factor. But the human factor for us, man, God being, human and divine. Number 7 for Gandhi is persist. Be persistent. In time, the opposition around you will fade and fall away. So the opposition to your peace. As we become deliberate cultivators of peace within us. You can feel that peace. When someone's really at peace, can you feel them? We talk about the vibrations. Many people in this community are highly intuitively sensitive. You can feel that peace. It's very attractive. And they say that we entrain people around us. I want to be the one that trains the group to peace, not to irritation, and have people follow me down the path of my irritation. Number 8, see the good in people and help them. Gandhi realized that the value of being out in the community. Most human beings are not satisfied with just working. There's a time in many of our lives where we need to really focus on here. If any of you have been going through addictions, 12-step programs, just any way where you're uplifting your own life, there's often a time where we need to go inward. And then there's usually this urge to go out and serve. And so delighted to be in service with so many of you lovely folks here at Unity. Number 9, be congruent, be authentic, be your true self. So, we talk about in so many different ways that we are the expression of God. And if you've done the 12 powers that Charles Fillmore and his wife developed, these powers of divinity that are in us that we can actually take out into the world. We're going to be lighting the 12 candles of the 12 powers that are candlelighting service on the 16th. And so honoring the self we are in our human conditions. Not trying to say they're not happening, but allowing our true self, our true divine nature, the incredible beings that we are as expressions of the I am, as the Christ consciousness, allowing that to be the container that holds our human circumstances. And number 10 is to continue to grow and evolve. Constant development is the law of life. And a man who always tries to maintain his dogmas, now realize man, in these old teachings mean men or women, okay? A man who tries to maintain his dogmas in order to appear consistent drives himself into a false position. Ongoing growth, I would say. Anyone who's coming here regularly, you're in the club with the rest of us that realize that ongoing growth and development is key to our satisfaction in life. Key to cultivating that joy, key to cultivating the practice. If you are consciously, actively engaging your life, what am I thinking, what am I feeling, how am I acting, are they lining up, then you are one that has said, yes, I want to be a deliberate cultivator of my life. And as we go into this Christmas season, as you go into this week of reading these Advent readings, and if you've never done that before, I encourage you to consider trying it for even 1 week. Why does Unity continue to put out a book that's about Advent? I've had people say, well, that's just an old practice. Why do we need to do that in the modern day world? I have found it to be really valuable to use the Unity book. There's a lot of the old Christian teachings that didn't fit me. That's why I'm at Unity. But the principles that underlie it are still incredibly relevant today as we step forward as deliberate cultivators of our own life, the deliberate cultivators of our peace.